Welcome to the party. I'm Sam Ekstrom of Locked On Sports Minnesota. Have the Vikings been vindicated for the Stefon Diggs trade?
I'm Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings, and if you listen to Dov Kleiman and get your news from there, whatever happens to you is on you.
Luke Inman at Luke_Spinman. If I read one more mock draft, my head's going to explode. Just wake me up April 25th. Will it?
25th? Is that okay? This is Arif Hasan from the Wide Left Substack, and I have recently learned the location of Luke Braun's honeymoon.
Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota Football Party. It's your guys hanging out.
Oh, God, he's gone.
Luke Braun has disappeared. Welcome into the Minnesota Football Party on a Thursday. We're going live as we do every Monday and Thursday here on Locked On Sports Minnesota. If you're not watching us live, you can catch us after the fact here on Locked On Sports Minnesota.
That we're live?
Please,
I think we did.
Someone should probably do that. Please subscribe to Locked On Sports Minnesota if you can find us, though we have not tweeted. You can also find us on the Locked On Vikings podcast feed.
It's on you to find.
Wherever you get your podcasts. I think Luke Inman would be the one who has access to the link on the back end of YouTube on-air production meeting. If Luke Inman could take care of that, that would be great.
I'm on.
On today's show, Stefon Diggs dealt. We'll react to it like
whenever,
news.
Right?
Okay. News broke. Yes. Over 24 hours ago.
Still within the statute of limitations. And I think this is where the Dov Kleiman reference was coming. We'll get into the report, the alleged report of the Vikings waiting till 2025 to get a quarterback. Also, Ron Johnson joins in about 15 minutes. We'll take your fan questions as you filter in to the show today. We appreciate you watching us live and interacting. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app. Do it now. You won't regret it. Create an account. Use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Did I mention that Stefon Diggs was dealt to the Texans from the Bills?
You did. Yep.
Thank you. For a second-round pick, and they also got back a couple of day 3 picks in return. Can you believe Stefon Diggs is 30? Like that. First of all, let's just focus on that for a minute. This is his 10th year in the league coming up. Oh my gosh, we are old. But
I was going to say it looks good on him. I mean, sure, we can call him old, but I think he's just entering the second phase of his life. Good for him.
Time for his Silver Fox chapter.
The third phase of his NFL career with the Houston Texans, young team on the rise, young quarterback. Boy, I wonder whose honeymoon period will last longer, Luke Braun's or Stefon Diggs. Because the honeymoon periods with Stefon Diggs, they are wonderful.
He's going to have a ring at the conclusion of his honeymoon period, right? Like,
true. Wow.
Way to take the analogy and run with it. I don't know how you can spin this for Buffalo other than shedding a potential malcontent on their team. Like, I don't know how you can justify what they did. Really.
Okay, I will say this though, right? Like, the Vikings ended up in a good place after the Stefon Diggs trade, right? Like, obviously drafting Justin Jefferson was an insanely good outcome. That said, that doesn't make it not a failure of Vikings management to correctly handle that situation. And I still think that even though Diggs obviously has a lot of share in the blame there, I think ultimately that was a management failure. And based off of the reporting that Tyler Dunn did back in December, where he had basically indicated that this is like a thing that we should be kind of careful about that might end up happening. It also sounds like that's a failure of Bills management too, in that they didn't really know how Stefon Diggs operated. Again, not to say that Stefon Diggs doesn't have his own share of blame involved here, but I don't think it's a Terrell Owens situation. It's also very clearly not like an Adam Thielen situation where it's like, oh, when he blows up on the field, it's like, who cares, right? Like, I understand that there's like a middle ground here, but I do think the Bills effed up in the same way that the Vikings effed up. And like, we know that the Vikings didn't do personnel management super well near the end of Zimmer's tenure, right? Like, we know that. So I don't think
that
it's a
offseason
crazy take.
is what got Rick Spielman fired. It just took 2 years to materialize.
Yeah, and in what ways do you think the Vikings and the Bills didn't do what they could have done to clean this mess up? Do you think, like, from the management, from the upper brass, from the coaches themselves? What do you think they could have done differently?
Yeah.
Well, I think that it was fair for Diggs to come away from his initial contract negotiation thinking that they would throw the ball, and they didn't do that. And I think that was like a big part of it. I think also my take from back then, I think, is still the case where I don't know what that means, Scott. Thank you. Scott Krasik, Atlanta Falcons guy. Love him. But
shout out, Scott.
My take was primarily that Diggs wants to be trusted, and
yes, yep,
and it gets really bothered when you question his level of commitment or trust. And if you win, it doesn't really matter all that much if you throw him the ball. But if you lose and didn't throw him the ball, he's going to be mad. I think that's what happens.
314 targets the past 2 years, though. He was definitely throwing the ball.
I don't think that was his issue in Buffalo. I don't think the issue was whether or not he got thrown the ball. I just think that was the issue in Minnesota. But I will say, like, it very much seems like the Bills did not trust Diggs to get ready for the season in the way that they wanted him to get ready for the season, which seems to be kind of a huge part of that split. And so, yeah, I'm not saying Buffalo was wrong. I'm just saying that this can also be like a management failure too, right? Like, Tomlin was correct to get rid of Antonio Brown. That doesn't mean every coach that gets rid of a receiver that's difficult to deal with is correct.
And here's what I want to
do. So yeah, go ahead, Braun, before I explode. Go ahead.
I don't want to give the Bills credit as though they made this decision like thinking they were going to save some value. They're taking a disgusting dead cap hit. They get a second rounder next year for a guy that
next year.
Like we don't get to look at the Bills and be like, "Ooh, why did they sell on him? Maybe they are. This is like a way that they're trying to build a better." No, this is an interpersonal situation that got out of hand. They had no choice but to trade him, and the reason that the value is so deflated is because everybody knows that they had no choice but to trade him. That's what it looks like when you have a receiver demanding out. And considering a similar vibe in Minnesota, getting first round picks, kind of a big dub there. And I don't think, even in hindsight, I don't think Diggs was saying, trade me, I'm out, I'm not going to play for you anymore or whatever. He was unhappy, but the Bills sort of were the catalyst to the issue. When the Vikings traded him to the Bills were the ones that like actually reached out and said, hey, let's do something. Whereas in this situation, it sounds like Diggs was the catalyst. He was the one saying, trade me. I am going to start this process personally.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's a trust thing. I think you nailed it, Arif. Like, Diggs wants to do things Diggs' way. We all know that. Maybe it's, hey, I want to skip some voluntary workouts and I want to work out on my own. I want you to trust me, though, that I'm going to show up and always be at my 100%, give my 100%. When coaches see that as a distraction, though, maybe an annoyance, and then he thinks, okay, maybe this guy's, not being a team guy or putting himself before the team right now, it does rub some coaches the wrong way, whether that's right or wrong. Maybe it rubs some wrong quarterbacks the wrong way too, but you get an old school personality running the show like Mike Zimmer, like a McDermott, and they get to a point where, okay, maybe the headache's not worth the talent anymore. I know you mentioned, though, Diggs was the one being proactive before the Bills. I wonder how much the Bills were ready to punch that button, though, and say, Okay, yeah, Diggs is being proactive, but we were ready to be proactive as well. I wonder how much longer they were willing to kind of let this, I don't want to say side circus or anything like that, but let this headache run out. Another offseason, 2 more off seasons. Maybe they were, kind of ready to be proactive this offseason as well. But yeah, I'm not really surprised as far as his personality not aligning and matching up with someone like Sean McDermott's personality, especially after getting, to know the real Diggs here in Minnesota for those 4, 5, 6 years.
I do want to address something in the chat. Hoopstock69 says it's everybody's fault but Diggs. No, that's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is that from an organizational perspective, there were probably things that you could do from management that could have mitigated or avoided the situation. Obviously, Diggs plays a big role in this, right? Like, he could have handled or reacted to all of these things in a much different way that could have avoided this. So in that sense, he does carry a significant portion of the blame. I'm just saying from the perspective of team management, is there a team management environment that you could have created that could have avoided this? And I think that there is. And so I think from that perspective, you can.
Yeah, but Arif, how do you know what lengths the Bills have gone to? Like, how many times are they going to compromise or try to massage, the Stefon Diggs
how do you
problem
know
over the years?
Diggs has gone to? How do you know how much they haven't done? I don't know that we can speak from the perspective of the lack of knowledge in only one vector or one direction, right? Yeah, I don't know how much the Bills have done, but neither do any of us. And so we can only go off of the information that we have. And we do know that when Diggs missed voluntary workouts, they were very, very upset about that. And you don't have to be upset about that. That's a choice you made, right? And Diggs took that personally, right? That's what we get from the reporting from Tyler Dunn. And so I think that plays a role. Yeah, maybe the Bills made a couple of compromises. Was it enough? Did they go too far for it to be manageable? Is it further than any other team would have gone? I don't actually know that, but I can't say that because I don't know that I'm going to assume that the Bills made a bunch of compromises that other teams wouldn't have. I think that based off of the reporting we have available to us, that they were very stringent about the things that they asked their players to do, and that operated outside of how Diggs likes to get ready for a season.
Hard to believe that the Bills would be eager and not do everything in their power to not trade a guy before his extension even starts, a guy that's been
Why is that hard to believe?
It's extremely...
McDermott is an old school inflexible coach.
Yeah,
you think they were eager.
To believe if you're trying to retrofit this into being some kind of value decision that isn't about the guy demanding out of Buffalo. Stefon Diggs demanded out of Buffalo and they did what they could with that. It's as easy to explain.
Right. And we know that McDermott is an inflexible coach. He almost got fired this season. They went on a 6-game win streak to avoid that. That's great. I'm glad. But that has historically been an issue. Remember when they fired their offensive coordinator, their defensive coordinator went on sabbatical, and something happened with their special teams coordinator? They turned over an entire coaching staff. You're going to tell me the head coach is a flexible guy?
I don't think that this falls squarely on necessarily the head coach. I think it's probably more of a collaboration. And I think
that's what
in many cases, if the head coach has a problem with a guy that incurs a $31 million dead cap hit, they can't just flex their muscle and say, get rid of him. That is a group decision based on mountains of evidence and a belief that things are not going to get better.
Yeah.
And you would not do this lightly. This is like a face of their franchise, and you're paying a ton for him to go away, and you're kind of confessing that this is the relative end of a championship window. This is a huge deal for Buffalo. And I have a hard time buying that this is just a rash or knee-jerk decision that didn't have a lot else behind it.
I don't think it's a rash or a knee-jerk decision. I think that they came to this decision after a lot of deliberation, after Diggs demanded a trade. And he demanded a trade in part because of how inflexible the coaching staff is. So yeah, they made a decision. I just don't think it's reasonable to expect that they did everything possible to reach a compromise with Diggs to avoid this from blowing up, because they may not have even known they were this close, and that is a man management problem. You have to get better at reading the players in the locker room and figuring out when someone is so discontented that they demand a trade. I don't trust the management skills of a guy that had to turn over his entire coaching staff. Like that is pretty simple to me.
What
A
what do you have to do?
20-25 second did seem awfully cheap at first glance in my book. I think they even have to give up a 5th this year and a 6th next year too, which is kind of wild. But at the same time, I say that, and it's like every year I'm always shocked. Guys like Keenan Allen get dealt for what, a 5th? DeAndre Hopkins a 3rd and a 5th. Deontay Johnson a day 3.
Draft picks.
Of course, it costs money. Yeah, I mean, yeah. But I will say there's an argument now. Yeah, he's on the wrong side of 30. His skill set maybe is only going to diminish from here. Having said that, though, if you're asking me, if I was in a Super Bowl window right now, I was running a team, I could get Stefon Diggs for a future second, I'd be all over it, man. Clearly, the Bills gave him away at a discount just to get him out of the building. I think we know that.
Yeah, there's like 2 years left on his contract, right? Something like that.
I think so. Yeah,
4.
That sounds right.
4.
Is it 4 years?
Yeah, it was 2 guaranteed, right?
2 or 3.
Okay. 4 years left on his contract. I think that's the perfect window, because I think you wouldn't want him past 34 or anything like that. But yeah, trading a future 2nd round pick for that guy right when you think that you've got the division by the short hairs. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I understand why the Texans made that move.
He's not. Yeah, go ahead, Luke.
I was just gonna give Rick Spielman some love because the guy pulled off maybe the best net value deal in franchise history. When you think about it, you draft a guy in the 5th round. What's a 5th round pick worth? You draft a guy in the 5th round, you get multiple Pro Bowl years out of him,
as we learned,
and then you flip that guy for a 1st and a 3rd, and I think a 5th as well. You turn that into Justin Jefferson and Cam Bynum. That alone, I know we all love to rip on Rick Spielman, all the 7th round picks he gets made fun of, but that's absolute insanity from just a pure net gain standpoint, turning a 5th round pick into what he still is today.
Remember when he traded Percy Harvin for a 1st? That was nuts.
1st and a 3rd, baby.
That's a crazy deal to be able to make.
And then he retired like 18 months later.
Yeah.
Turn that into the Patterson Floyd Rhodes.
That's right.
Draft.
Yes. Yeah. Trade it back up into the 1st. Is it going to be Manti Te'o? Is it going to be Cordell Patterson? Who's it going to be? If you're watching, Rick, we still love you. Rich
Spinman does.
Richard Spielman.
Spinman has never lost his affection for you. Stefon Diggs is Jimmy Butler. He is not content unless he's discontent. He is going to turn into Brandon Cooks in his 30s. Because that contract, the dead money, is going to dry up after this year, and that is going to be a movable, restructurable contract. And if he's not okay with that, he's going to be on a 4th team. He's going to be on a 5th team, and he's way too good for that. Like, what? Why? I think Buffalo was a great fit for him. I thought it was going to work out long term in Buffalo. I thought that, like, I had actually come around to a point where I was willing to say, yeah, this is on Minnesota. Like, this is on Minnesota for not making it work with you. And this does change the perspective for me. Like, if Buffalo couldn't make this work, if they reached a breaking point with a guy that is getting 160 targets a year and got paid and extended generously, then I think it is actually some vindication for Minnesota in the decision they made in retrospect. I think this changes.
I will also add this. Buffalo currently, I believe, only has one player 30 or older on their roster right now. Like, that's
it.
Also a thing that they do, is that they don't really care that much about veterans. So I think that plays a role here. And the guy is Von Miller, right? So it's like, yeah, okay, fine.
Is this the shortest of short mini rebuilds this year for I mean, think about how many guys they've let go. They've let like 5-6 core guys go.
Gabe Davis.
And now they got an extra second next year. Poyer, Davis, one of the starting offensive linemen.
Hyde.
Morris.
I wonder how much of that is like a philosophical, let's get a little younger, and how much of it is like, well, these guys are washed, we got to move on. Like,
yeah.
I don't know if you get to make get to choose when you move on from your old guys. You move on from them when they're too old to be good for you anymore.
But all of them,
the guys, not like philosophy.
All of them.
Right. All.
I'm looking at the 2023 offseason and all those for the Vikings, and yeah, kind of all of them were pretty washed.
So how does this reflect on Joe Brady? the offensive coordinator there. I know he took over for Ken Dorsey. There was already a little bit of turmoil. What's it going to look like now? Is it going to regress? Are we going to get better? Pass the ball more to Diggs? How do you think this reflects on Joe Brady, if at all, if anything?
Diggs wasn't as effective last year.
Yeah, but I don't think that was necessarily his fault either. I don't think Dorsey was a great offensive coordinator. I don't think Joe Brady was a very great offensive coordinator either. I think that was an issue with the offense. Also, I mean, the passing game was tremendously unlucky last. Like, if you take a look at how how that passing game evolved over the year, it was every ball bounced the wrong way, kind of like it did for the first 4 weeks for the Vikings, where it was like, well, okay, that's not really Kirk Cousins' fault. That's not really Josh Allen's fault. That's not really Stefon Diggs' fault. That happened like a lot last year. I don't know. It was kind of bizarre. But I don't think Brady ran a very great offense. I think Josh Allen was just outstanding to kind of overcome a lot of the stuff that happened there. It was very weird.
And Diggs had a weird year too. The first 8-9 weeks, he looked like Stefon Diggs, the Stefon Diggs we know and love. And then those last 7-8 weeks, I think he averaged around 50 yards. I think he had 1 touchdown those last 8-9 weeks. Obviously, kind of flopped in the playoffs as well. I think the 6 games in the playoffs as well, Diggs has averaged 0 touchdowns and like 50 yards, 4.5 catches a game as well too. I heard some Bills fans kind of griping about that as well. But yeah, a lot of different variables that obviously go into a big decision like that.
Yeah, we'll ask Ron Johnson about this. He's in the room. He's coming up next on the Minnesota Football Party. Brought to you today by Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from another retirement account with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. Ron Johnson coming up here on the Minnesota Football Party. He hosts the Ron Johnson Show, and he has a great former Viking coming up on the next episode. Can't wait for everybody to see that. He's at... You'll have to wait and see. You'll have to wait and see.
Let me send Stefon Diggs a tweet.
Let's get your take, Ron, right out of the gate. Stefon Diggs dealt. What do you make of it?
It's business, man. Like, at the end of the day, that's the message I did actually send him. I'm like, business is business. I get it. It's business. And so clearly, we can't deny what's like transpired last season. So, his coach comes out and says, we don't know where Stefon is. We hope he's okay. But then the actual media comes out later to find out he didn't leave. They asked him to leave because of whatever was going on. So it's a difference if you leave the facility, like when he faked a cold with the Vikings. That's why he apologized to the Vikings. He's never going to apologize to the Bills because they asked him to leave practice and then acted like, oh, we don't know where he's at. I hope he's okay. I hope he's doing, like, you told him not to be there because of how he was acting. So clearly he wasn't happy. Him and Josh Allen from the season before, we know they got into it. We don't know if the rumors are true. Like maybe there was girl drama and Stefon told him to suck it up, get over it.
Yeah.
Then there's also the you didn't see me open, and Josh Allen ignoring him. Josh Allen then comes back saying, man, I didn't even see him standing there. I'm looking at my tablet. Like, at the end of the day, GTFOH. We all know what that means, but get out of here with all that. Like, you could have like Brady. Brady doesn't ignore his teammates in tough times. Like PJ Fleck, when he got the job for the
They ignore him. That's what we've learned.
Yeah. He said, I eat tough conversations for breakfast is what PJ Flex quote was. Sometimes you have to have that tough conversation. And I get it. There's a place and a time for everything. But why not, if your player's looking at you like, you ain't see me? Just say, hey, man, come here. Like, what's going on, man? Like, my bad. Like, I you know what? I didn't see you. I was, the read told me the safety was in cover 2. I didn't think the seam was going to be open because I thought the linebacker was going to drop. I didn't realize you were going to make it over the top. Whatever it was, be man enough to admit you messed it up. And then to go into the offseason, no talking, unfriending each other on social media, no responses to each other. When somebody says like, hey, when's the last time you talked to Diggs? Oh yeah, we'll see each other at minicamp. Like, that's a problem. Like, if you haven't texted your receiver, so the problem started there. I think we're forgetting that. And then you fast forward to the season, he plays under it, whatever, but he wasn't happy. And then the offseason happens and you get time to think. You're wanted. Like, it's one thing if you're unwanted. He's wanted. So that's what happened. The Houston Texans wanted him. The Bills were like, we got to get rid of him. And they moved on. But when you see Josh Allen's receivers now, they're back in purgatory. So they do have some issues. It is what it is. The Texans got way better. They got Danielle Hunter and Stefon Diggs, Joe Mixon. They're going to get Tank Dell back. They got Nico Collins. They got CJ Stroud, who's one of the best rookie quarterbacks from last season. They're going to be good. And so at the end of the day, Stefon Diggs just makes them better. Now we'll see how that operates, him and Stroud. But the fact that CJ Stroud walked out of a building with Amber Rose, I think he could put up with anybody. So if he could put up with Amber Rose and Wiz Khalifa and all that drama, he could put up with anybody. So he'll be fine with Diggs.
Ron, some people are saying, okay, the Bills, they need a receiver now, loaded receiver class. They could pull like a Julio Jones trade, like the Falcons moved all the way up from 27. Maybe the Bills go after, Roma Dunze, Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison. I guess, who do you like in that wide receiver pool for what the Bills need now on offense? And also, that would shake up the top 10 quite a bit. What other moves or trades could you see going down in the top 10 that could affect the Vikings' plans if they don't get into that top 3 picks?
I don't think anybody that wants to take Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to trade away their pick to give up Marvin Harrison Jr. to the Bills. So I don't think that's going to happen. Now, the other guys, I could see them making that move. At the end of the day, though, again, it comes down to what do you need? What is going to help you get over the hump, and X, Y, and Z. So is receiver their need? Do they feel like some of the guys they have coming in and are in the building already are good enough to get, Shakir Khalil or something like that?
Khalil
like
Shakir and Curtis Samuel from Washington.
Chris Samuel, But I mean, Chris Samuel is good, but he's not a wide receiver 1. So I get you. That's what I'm saying. Could they trade up and try to, hit a home run with the receiver? Maybe. Could they try to trade with a team that doesn't, could they trade with the Vikings and say, look, give us Justin Jefferson, we'll give you Josh Allen? That they wouldn't do that. That's a dumb trade. But I'm just saying, they are going to have to figure it out. But at the end of the day, Stefon Diggs, going back to that too, his Vikings issue happened the season before as well. Like, if you remember some of the front office stuff where Diggs felt like they didn't have his back, and they felt like some of the conversations or the words being used in his direction weren't great. It goes to that. It's funny. Like, my timeline from Facebook does that. Like, oh, this day, whatever it is. Luke Inman actually shot a video. My first interview with Stefon Diggs, it was his second year in the league, and they had just drafted Laquan Treadwell, and Luke Inman didn't even know this guy. I'm like, hey, hold my phone.
Weirdo. Who's this?
I'm like, hold my phone, because me and Diggs were just hanging out. But I'm like, hey man, let me get some questions. And then I'm like, damn, who's gonna? Luke Inman shot my first interview, quote unquote, with Stefon Diggs his rookie year. And so that video did pop up. And when I look back at some of the questions he said then, his big thing was respect. He was like, because I asked him, I said, they drafted Laquan Treadwell in the first round. What, blah, blah. He's like, man, look, I just want to be respected. I want to be seen to what I can do. If he's not respected, it goes back to 2016. He's going to leave. And so y'all can say what y'all want about him. They can say the man is worth it. Like, when you got a skill that everybody wants, you can do what you want. Think about Kim Kardashian. Dudes want what she got, so she can do whatever she wants. And that's why she keep getting dudes. Like, we be acting like, oh, I don't know why they do it. Do you see what she does? Like her, Courtney, like Kendall, Kylie.
A lot of us have seen what she does. I think that's
clearly she's doing something well because dudes keep going back. No matter what they've heard, no matter what they've seen, it's like, give me that Kardashian. And so Stefon Diggs is just as wanted. These teams are like, look, I don't care that he treated you that way. He's not going to treat us like that. Now, he still might, but they don't care right now. They're like, the Texans are like, look, let's go win the Super Bowl. So that's on that. But as far as the Bills go, they're screwed for a little bit. But we'll see. Like, their defense is changing. Their offense is completely changed. They lost like 8 players this season as well. So they got a lot of stuff to figure out.
So the Bills drafting right now in the 20s. Gluek 99 in the chat said Brian Thomas Jr. to the Bills as possibly that wide receiver 1 type. Do you think he can take on that role, Ron?
So I don't know. And this is why. Because we thought Jalen Reagor, when he went above Justin Jefferson, not me, but some people thought that. You know what I mean? And so you never really know. And I honestly thought back to my draft days, and I looked at guys drafted. I was just talking to David Tyree about that. And so when you look at where guys go sometimes too, and the offense they're going to, the team. So could he take on that role? Yes. Is that offense built to throw the ball? Yes. Do they have a quarterback willing to throw it? Yes. Can he figure it out? We don't know, because college is not the pros. There's a lot of top guys that get drafted and everybody assumes it's going to work out. And then they get there and the system or the verbiage or something just doesn't fit. So, Laquan Treadwell with the Vikings, like everybody thought like he was going to be the big body, number 1 receiver, Chris Carter type. And Stefon Diggs and Adam Thielen ended up taking over, and we never really saw Treadwell. So you just don't know. But can he do it? Yeah. Will it work? That's what we have to figure out.
Mm-hmm. So I wonder, obviously the Chiefs are a completely different animal. We can just set them aside for now. But is it possible in the modern NFL to be consistently successful without a wide receiver 1, right? Can the Bills craft a good team over the next couple of years if they don't hit on a receiver?
Yes. Yeah. So and think about Patrick Mahomes. Like, he had Tyreek Hill, very successful. He gets rid of Tyreek Hill. Everybody assumes it's not going to work. He finds a way to make it work. But again, that's why my first point was, what is the offense and what is the verbiage? Because an offense on paper, like, I'm not going to hate on Luke Braun, but Luke Braun could put together a great offensive package on all his little tablets and stuff. But can Luke Braun get in there and explain it to his coaches and his receivers that they understand what he's trying to get out of this? And that's where I go with that. Like, there's very smart coaches out there. You got to think about the offense too with the Bills when they lost, what's his name? Who was the offensive coordinator that played quarterback that left? Ken Dorsey. It changed. You know what I mean? Like, they were looking for a scapegoat. They got it. But then the offense actually it wasn't the same anymore. Like, they weren't able to get out of them what Ken Dorsey was able to say to them. And so, I think I forgot who said this, but everything, or Stefon Diggs tweeted it or whatever, his Instagram post, every good thing comes to an end. Eventually we all die. But when you
wait, that's proven? We know that for sure?
We're all going to die. Everybody's dying. I'm sorry.
Cousins,
I'm sorry, everybody on YouTube, everybody on the podcast, everybody, all the everydayers. I'm very sorry. If you guys went to Easter Sunday service, I hope the message was reminding you guys, we're all going to die. There's only one person that came back 3 days later. But if you think about this, right? So if you look at Adunze, you look at Brian Thomas out of LSU, you look at Mitchell even. I can drop down, like you look at Keon Coleman. So this is a name I think I said this with me and Sam, or maybe I was on this show. I really like Keon Coleman. Like, Keon Coleman in this draft. Now, again, I'm a little, like, he's a former Michigan State guy, so maybe I'm a little Big Ten, like, whatever, bias. Yeah, I'm a little biased. But I feel like Keon Coleman's ceiling, he could be a potential T. Higgins. Like, he could be a second day guy that people like after the preseason, like, oh my God, he was a steal. Because when you look at what he did at Florida State, now again, he didn't do nothing at Michigan State. All my Detroit friends, when they saw his plays in Florida State, they were like, where was this at when he was at Michigan State? He was trash. But maybe Florida State had an offense and a package that made it work for him. And maybe they simplified it for him. But when I'm looking at these names, like a guy like Keon Coleman, I feel like he can be a second day guy that could help the Bills. Not saying that's the direction they're going to go, but if he were to end up with the Bills, I think Josh Allen would be pretty, like, he could use him in that offense as a weapon. I'm not sure, like, Neighbors. We don't know if he's going to be that guy. Adunze. Nothing against Washington, but Washington receivers remind me of Oregon receivers. Sometimes it's just the offense. You throw so much at people, you can't stop everybody. So somebody's going to be open. Did they have a great quarterback at Washington? Yeah. So, like, that's what I'm saying. Like Marvin Harrison Jr., you can watch that film and say one-on-one, no matter who was the quarterback, except for that one guy that came in. He was terrible. But one-on-one, nobody's stopping him. And that's the difference in some of these other offenses where it's like Chris Carter. That's why Justin Jefferson fell to 22. He was in an offense that was air raid, and everybody's like, can he get off press? Is it Jamar Chase? Like,
can he play on the boundary? Everybody
exactly. There's a lot of question marks for some of these. And so again, I'm not knocking anybody because Justin Jefferson was knocked. LSU has been proven to be, wide receiver U. Maybe Neighbors and what's his name, Thomas are the guys. But I like Keon Coleman too on day 2. I wouldn't like jump out of my shoes to go get a receiver that I think can change my organization. I would try to see who's going to fall to me if I'm the Bills.
Ron, one more Vikings related question before we get out of here. There's been a report from Kevin Seifert basically insinuating the Vikings are preparing they're going to try to trade up, but they're also content if Sam Darnold has to start the year and they could get a quarterback in 2025. Does even 1% of you believe that, or is this just a smokescreen for the Vikings trying not to seem too eager?
Yeah, 1% of me believes that. Like, it does, because here's the thing. Like, we've seen this happen before. We've seen this play out where you got to be very careful with going to get Mitchell Trubisky. Like, you have to. So sometimes it's like, do we take this shot? And if we screw it up, we're in hell for the next whatever. How long have the Bears been in hell? 8, 9 years?
You're just fired.
So
they're in hell for longer than you're going to be there.
So that's kind of the problem.
Braun.
Yeah. So that's the problem is like, dang. Yeah. I forgot about all that. I'm thinking recency bias hell. I'm thinking Mitchell Trubisky. You fall for the banana in the tailpipe. You jump up and listen to everybody's like, oh, you got to trade up and get him. And that's why I think the Vikings are kind of skeptical too. It's like, do we really need to do this? Could Sam Darnold throw the ball to Justin Jefferson? Yes. My grandmother could throw the ball to Justin Jefferson and she's dead. So like that's just how good he is. Like you can make it work. Like the one thing with the what was the team? Nothing against Adam Thielen. But the one thing with the Panthers and Sam Darnold is they didn't have an Adam Thielen, and they were dumb enough to trade away DJ Moore. So when you think about all that, the Vikings, I think, with Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, maybe a TJ Hawkinson, possibly probably a running back they're going to draft early. I mean, you could get some good, not early, sorry, second round. You can get some good running backs from the Big Ten, the guy from Wisconsin, the guy from Michigan in the later rounds that can come in the NFL and be pretty good running backs this season. So I think when they're looking at that offensive line is pretty good, I think they're like, you know what? Do we need a running quarterback? Do we need a young, healthy quarterback? Or do we want to like go out and let's put pieces around this defense? Let's get an edge rusher. Let's go get a cornerback if we have to. Or maybe JJ McCarthy falls. I think like a lot of these reports, like the Patriots, I agree. I think the Patriots' new love for JJ McCarthy all of a sudden is because they want to push that price up. Oh yeah, we want JJ McCarthy. How much you want for him? Like that's all that is. And so I think there is a % chance the Vikings could sit back and do that. But at the end of the day, it's still a game. Like Kwesi is holding his cards. We don't know what he has. The river is out. It's king, queen, jack suited. We don't know if Kwesi has the ace and the 10, or is he sitting on 2-7 offsuit? We don't know, but he's basically going to hold his cards until the end, until April 25th, when I'm sitting at US Bank Stadium interviewing the fans. By the way, come to US Bank Stadium, people. I will be doing a Q&A with the fans and the draft picks for the Minnesota Vikings. I want to thank the Vikings for hiring me to do that job. Really appreciate it. Also, April 20th, come out to Grace Church in Eden Prairie. Myself, CJ Ham, David Tyree, and Matthew Slater will be on the stage with Tony Dungy and Paul Allen hosting a Rise with the Guys this year. So I just got that text yesterday that they would like me to be on the panel to sit down and discuss football life and life after football as well. I'm old. I'm the old guy. I'm 40. I'll be 44. So I'm the old guy. I remember when I would go to these events and I would see these old guys. I'm like, damn, that dude's old. That's me now. So I'm going to be the old guy while CJ Ham and them talk about the youthfulness of their life. And then I'm going to talk about like kids at home, we old. But yeah, make sure you guys want to do that too. April 20th at Grace Church in Eden Prairie. Tickets are online. Arrive with the guys. It's going to be a good one. They're giving out free footballs. The guys are going to sign some. Tony Dungy will be in attendance as well. Should be a good event. But yeah, no, I do think I do think there's a chance they could sit back at that draft pick and say, you know what, we're just going to see who falls to us.
3 weeks from today, we'll find out. And that'll be a lot of fun. Congrats on those jobs, Ron. That sounds awesome. Good event.
And Bryant McKinney is the guy Sam has not mentioned.
Spoiler alert. Yeah.
The show.
Bryant McKinney Tuesday on the Ron Johnson Show.
Next
Long
week.
chat with Bryant. He really opens up. It's a really good interview with Ron Johnson at 3Ron Johnson on Twitter/X. Joins us every Thursday. Awesome stuff, Ron, as always. Thanks a lot.
We'll appreciate it.
About 10 minutes left in this one. We're going to take some fan questions, put them in the chat right now if you want to have them answered coming up on the Minnesota Football Party. We are brought to you today by Gametime. Download the Gametime app and take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Gametime is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. They've got killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime is the best. Priority last-minute deals. Save up to 60% when you buy tickets last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater. You can get the tickets even after the event has started. The lowest price guarantee is great because Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference if you find better seats. Gametime ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So really the whole process from seeking out the tickets to buying the tickets in just 2 taps and then being protected with the ticket coverage after the fact, the whole process is seamless, easy, and it's based around the customer. So take the guesswork out, download the Gametime app, create an account, use code Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create the account, redeem code Locked On NFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And we're also brought to you today by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. With eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, let's take some questions from the chat if they are coming in. From Wyatt, I'm just going to read this blind. Assuming Drake May goes at 2, seeing how his track record of success is better than Jaden Daniels in the stat column, would y'all be okay trading 3 firsts for Jaden Daniels, the 1-year wonder?
I would prefer it.
Yeah,
sure.
Yep. Yeah.
I would. Hey, I know it's go get your guys season. I will say I'm doing everything I can not to give up that 2025 first. You don't want to end up in a situation like Carolina. Not to say that the Vikings roster is anything close to what Carolina was in last year, but maybe that 2026 first is what you offer first and see how those talks go. But yeah, go get your guys.
Perfect.
So that's assuming the Vikings get to number 3.
Yeah, that seems like that is part of the hypothetical. Yeah, to try to be a little more serious about that. I like the way that Jaden Daniels works the pocket better. That's like the main driving thing behind me having him above May, but it's not by like a lot. Like this is not like a take that I have so militantly that I'm going to go start fighting people online about it. It's okay if you have it different than me.
That's such a sad way to live, Luke. You should fight as often as possible.
Good
How's that
friend
going for
Michael.
You? How's your mental health?
My what?
Yeah. Okay.
What?
BetterHelp.
This episode brought to you by BetterHelp. BetterHelp.com/lockdown.
Michael Chow, love his contributions. Who are everyone's go get your guys for non-QB needs in day 3? He's in the camp for whatever QB KOC likes. He'll like. Feels the same way with Flores for defensive players and McCardell for wide receivers. So he trusts the coaching staff to build them up. Who should they take in day 3?
I mentioned Michael Hall Jr., the defensive tackle from Ohio State, ripped it up at the Senior Bowl. Not sure if he's going to be there on day 3, but man, if he fell in your lap, I would be all over that, especially pending whatever they do with that second first-round pick. If they have to package that up and they don't grab a defender, I would assume defensive tackle has got to be one of the top priorities. So Michael Hall is still on the top of my list.
Mine's still pretty short. I haven't watched too many day 3 guys, but I like the LSU D tackles. Jordan Jefferson.
Wingo,
if he's there, but he kind of feels like a day 2 guy to me.
Yeah.
But you have memorized their height and weight, Luke, right? You have your 850%.
Well, that's what draft analysis is memorizing every college player.
Yeah. That's like the most impressive part about post-draft analysis. It's just live. Hey, this guy had like 300 yards.
Yeah. Ultimately, you're just preparing for future segments of Name Drop. That's really what we're doing.
It's just beautiful trivia prep. I don't have like a ton of like guys I like really need to get. I like a lot of these running backs on day 3. I mentioned that on like 3 different shows, so I'm not going to go over them or anything like that. Bo Limmer and Isaiah Adams along the offensive line. Bo Limmer at center, Isaiah Adams at guard. Obviously, I'm biased by the fact that I was able to watch them at the Senior Bowl, but going back and kind of watching a little bit of what they did on film, I'm a little bit lower on Isaiah Adams now just because he had a really good Senior Bowl compared to his film, but I like both of them a lot. I'm like looking at this list here of like just like day 3.
There's so many good running backs I love as well on day 3. Give me your top 2. Marshawn Lloyd, Jesus. Ray Davis. I mean, there's so many of them.
Florida State guy for me.
Trey Benson.
I like Audric Estime a lot.
I love him too.
I think the fact that he had a really bad combine makes me like him more just because that's not what he plays like at all. He plays like a really good athlete, right?
Singles and doubles hitter. I think we talked about last week.
Yeah. Is he fast or slow? I'd like a fast running back.
He's nominally slow, but he doesn't feel slow to me. I don't know.
Your home run burner.
He carries his pads well, is what you're saying.
Yeah, right. But yeah, I mean, Bub Means, was he Michigan State? I'm trying to remember. He had an insane combine. Not
Dorendo, the guy from
Louisville, something like
Louisville.
That.
His combine
he transferred
was
too,
off
right?
the charts.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there's a ton of guys that I kind of just like. There's not a ton of day 3 guys that I'm like out on, right? Like maybe the Wisconsin offensive lineman, Bortoloni. Like, okay, fine, I don't like him, but there's just a ton of day 3 guys that this year I'm like kind of excited about, which isn't really the case for most years. Like most years there's like 7
and it's nice
really
because the Vikings do have, a handful of day 3 picks. Obviously
that's all they have.
They can wheel and deal. That's all they got.
How out can you be on a day 3 guy? Like it's round 6, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. If they drafted like Joe Milton, I'd be like, yeah, let's go.
Sure.
All right.
Let's play.
Sure, man. Like,
yeah.
What's he going to do? Not make the team? That happens half the time anyways.
Moritz Boringer was probably as close as I got to being out on a day 3 guy.
That was fun. You don't like fun?
Yeah, he's a Mobo.
Sure. Buy into the hype though. Come
on,
fun?
you don't believe in dreams, Sam?
I was hyped until I watched one
highlight
practice, and then it was over. Machu Beach, where did things go wrong with Lewis Seen? Hard to believe someone drafted so early just cannot get on the field this many years in. Bad scouting or bad fit. I mean, he got hurt, yes, but I tend to think it's upstairs with him. Like, I think he is physically back to normal. From what I saw, he can make the plays. It's about processing the plays. And at the safety position with Flores, you have to be so sharp upstairs. Like, this is why Harrison Smith is such a good fit. I think Lewis Seen is still swimming a little bit, and this is the unseen aspect of young players. Some of them just don't get it quickly. I think that's what's going on.
Right now I think it's about tackling.
It'd be tough for me to believe it's a bad fit across 2 defensive coordinators, one of whom mind you, was very inflexible. So maybe, but still, two different defensive coordinators couldn't find a place for him, especially one that is like famously good at creating roles for people to slot into and
For
making them as
defensive backs
effective as
in
possible.
particular.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So like, okay, if Brian Flores can't use you, I don't know who can. But it's not a ton of guys. So I think it's probably bad scouting. Luke, you mentioned tackling. It's interesting because he like hits hard. He just doesn't.
He hits hard, but like
Do
we
the
saw
right-
that in the preseason.
Do you guys remember the preseason game versus the Seahawks last year
Yeah.
where he met Zach Charbonnet in the hole and Zach Charbonnet absolutely thumped him?
Right.
It just
That kind of thing
Okay.
will mess it up really bad, especially in Flores's defense, where you're not playing as much soft zone, so you don't have as much help if you're going to come up and try to make that tackle.
Mhm.
It's not like just slow him down and your teammates will rally. No, your teammates blitzed. It's you or it's a touchdown. So
Mhm.
being a poor tackler is like particularly unacceptable. And I think he just has to get better at that. If he doesn't get better at tackling, then he just can't make the team, which is honestly like pretty universal for football. That's pretty important on defense. But that's currently the critical problem. And I think like in college, you look at that and you go, maybe we can teach him how to tackle. And you take the risk of him never learning how to tackle. That's the risk of like drafting guys and saying, well, they'll just develop.
But I do think Sam's also right that, for whatever reason, he's not catching up as quickly as he needs to.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I think
Agreed. That's the number one thing you hear every college athlete going to the pros talk about first and foremost. The speed of the game from college to the pros is the first thing that jumps out to everybody.
Yeah. Thanks for the questions. We appreciate it. We got a wrap on the Minnesota Football Party. Mondays and Thursdays going live, talking Vikings with this crew. Great show today, fellas. Go back and watch the Stefon Diggs debate earlier in the show if you missed it. And we'll talk to you Monday on the Minnesota Football Party.